Through many dangers toils.
Hi, I'm Covita Maroney, co-founder of SAVAE, the San Antonio Vocal Arts Ensemble. When we were in the studio recording Revival Tonight, I brought along my video camera and asked the members who had some personal experience with the music that we were recording to tell us what they knew, what they had seen as kids, what it was like growing up in the Southern Baptist tradition, but especially growing up with the music that we recorded on Revival Tonight. Hope you enjoy it.
When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
Well, singing these songs reminds me of back when I was a kid, and my mom and dad were the song directors in the Baptist church. And I'd be sitting out in the congregation along with my brothers and sisters, and my mom and dad would be up at the pulpit, and my mom would be playing the accordion, and she and dad would be singing, and it was always a beautiful alto tenor duet.
I was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1969, moved to South Mississippi in second grade. My mother's family was Church of Christ, and so I have a lot of memories of listening to them sing a cappella, and I remember being amazed that my mother could sing harmonies without any instruments helping her out at all.
When I was growing up, we'd go back to Indiana, and they had what was a permanent tent kind of established. It was a pavilion, and every summer they would have basically a revival, and we would go, and it was outside, and it was at the Fairmount Campground near where James Dean was from. And in fact, some of his relatives would even go to that, and we'd sit out there, and you'd have your fans, and there'd be, you know, people playing music when you'd walk in, and you'd sing the old hymns, and then different people would get up and preach each night, and you'd just go out each night for that service. And
so I grew up as a Southern Baptist, and went to revivals when I was a little kid in Kentucky and Tennessee, and also once I moved to Texas, continued going to revivals.
My grandfather was a minister, and so I grew up in a family where you were in church every Sunday, and you were in the choir from the moment they knew you could sing a note. And so I was probably 4 or 5 years old singing in the church choir, the adult church choir.
Well, the revivals are they're really awesome experiences because you're there for an entire week, you're singing and praising the Lord every day, and then you get to hear special music, because they always invite special musicians to come sing. And they're always singing much more regularly, the really upbeat, fire in your heart and soul revival music.
It was definitely a little country Baptist church, kind of out in this big field, and I mean, we used to do picnics out there and hay rides and all that stuff, and kind of off the back side of the church we would set up the revival tent, and it was almost like a scene out of Hee Haw, you know, with all the bales of hay and people sitting around and the wooden pews under the tent. It was actually great. It's almost a comforting kind of a memory.
growing up, I remember hearing these stories about my grandparents and how he had a tent that they would take out, and they lived in a trailer that they would tow along behind their car. And this was during the 30s and 40s, so during the Depression and World War II, and they'd go into these small towns, and my grandpa would go around and knock on doors and meet people, and they'd have an ecumenical evangelistic revival tent meeting.
Probably my favorite thing that we did in the Baptist church were the revivals that we would have, where we'd all learn kind of camp-like songs. And then on the fifth Sunday night, whenever the months had 5 Sundays, on the fifth Sunday night we would always have fifth Sunday night sings, where the congregation would just call out hymn numbers, and for an hour or an hour and a half we would just all sing hymns.
My mom started playing at camp meetings and revivals when she was about 10. She had started playing piano when she was 4, and she began actually going around and participating in those when she was 10, and she's basically done that ever since. She's been a church musician ever since.
Anyone who comes to church or comes to a revival or comes to any sort of place that music's being played, it feeds some part of your soul.
I'll never forget that one in Oklahoma. The tent was huge. I'm like, where did all these people come from? Because some tent revivals, the tents are smaller than others.
How many people?
Hundreds. I don't know. Once again, I was a little kid, so I may be remembering it differently.
They would bring people up into the front of the church, and they would ask them their ailments, and people would tell them, you know, I'm suffering from headaches, or, you know, I've got arthritis, or I'm, you know, cancer of the liver. I don't know. It's just different things. And the pastor would lay his hand on somebody's head, and he would scream out, "You are healed now!" And the person would just drop to his back. And it was a little bit frightening, but yeah.
One of the crusades I went to there in Houston, of course they called it a crusade versus a revival.
Yeah.
And again, those in Houston, they were different than the ones I went to in Kentucky and Tennessee. You know, those were much smaller. It was much more intimate. This was much more commercial. It was big. It was more like a Billy Graham crusade.
I like the contemporary Christian stuff. I think it has a place. I think it brings a lot of youth into the church, and the message in them is good. But I think when you go strictly to that, I think you lose something. And this is the type of music that this country has been singing since it was founded. You know, hymns. Way back to the singing schools. I mean, the earliest pilgrims, they all got together and sang. And I think if we move completely to the contemporary and forget about this stuff, I think we lose something.
So that's what would happen in a revival. You'd come from a Sunday to a Sunday. Sunday night it'd start, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and probably finish up on Sunday morning.
They're very moving. They're typically like a week long, and you kind of reach this mountaintop experience, and it's a pretty amazing thing.
But this one particular night, we had gone through this revival, and a revival, by the way, of course, is a week long, where every day you go to church, and every night there's a sermon, and every night there are songs. It's a whole week of all that. And so by the end of that week, I had just been so moved emotionally that I stood up, walked down the aisle, and I think my friend who wanted me to go up there for so long was crying harder than I was. But I was crying. I went up there, I prayed the prayer, I truly meant it. I lived, and I still try to live by those values, but I was on fire, as they say, for the longest time.
And on the altar calls at the end of the service, "Just As I Am" was one of the songs that was sung most often. It was just a very touching song, and when you listen to the words and what the event is, the altar call is just perfect for something like that.
Looking back at it as an adult now, I would say definitely the ones back in Kentucky and Tennessee, where it was a little smaller, a little more intimate.
These songs mean a lot to me because there have been, they've always come up at different times in my life. They're the same songs I've sung over and over again, but there are different things that are going on in my life at different periods of time. And so as I get older, the more I sing them, the more rich they are to me because of the history.
You start to feel God in it. It's interesting, but you do, and you really start to appreciate how in different societies and cultures how people worshipped. And this was one of many ways that people worshipped, and this was very comfortable.
We never got to, as a family, really sing these songs the way it should have been done, and you want to do it in church together as a family. So I kind of feel like I'm getting to do that with my SAVAE family.
Doing this project has been really neat because, number one, it's in English. Number two is because it brings back a lot of memories of growing up in the church as a kid.
Give me that old-time religion, give me that old-time religion, give me that old-time religion, it's good enough for me.